Hi, I'm Brendan Smith. I'm the city's arts coordinator, and I'd like to thank you guys all for coming out this close to the holidays. And so tonight we've got an open reading, so we're pretty excited about hearing from a bunch of different poets, maybe some we haven't heard from before. And this is part of the We Are Takoma series that the city of Takoma Park does. We have lots of different events, film screenings. We've got a new art exhibition that's opening January 4th. You may have seen the one out here with a flower theme. The next is going to be focused on calligraphy. And so if you want to check out our schedule for upcoming events, you can go to the city's Facebook page or to tacomaparkmd.gov/arts. And so now Kevin Adler, one of the city's Arts and Humanities Commission members, is going to have a few words to say. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and like Brendan said, I can assure you all the programs of the Arts and Humanities Commission are really worth attending. Many of them are in this room, and it's a wonderful series throughout the year. I just wanted to mention I brought a bunch of poetry books. They're sitting here in these two bags at the front left here. My mother was a high school English teacher. My parents are scaling down from a house to an apartment, and I have one of those little libraries in my front yard, so she said, put the books there. But I thought, with the poetry books, I'd first try to home in a little bit on people who might be more inclined to take them. So please, here they are, and at the end of the readings, help yourselves. Thanks.
So I don't have a heavy introduction to make this evening, but I do want to say just a couple of things. As Brendan said, he is the arts coordinator, and this whole program is under the Office of Economic and Community Development that is headed by Sarah Daines. And also in the Arts and Humanities Commission. It's a program of the Arts and Humanities Commission. This whole series, we're now, I think, in our 12th year. It was begun by the first poet laureate in Takoma Park, Don Berger, and it's continued since then. There's a third Thursday committee that selects poems or poets to read, and I will mention, and I'll probably mention each over the coming months, that we have a schedule for the rest of the year through the spring of 2018, but we are already accepting applications for the fall of 2018 and into spring of 2019. And it's on the Takoma, We Are Takoma website, I think, or if you look up Third Thursday Takoma Park, you'll find the guidelines for submitting poems to be able to read. As I mentioned to all of you, the reading series is filmed, it's being broadcast, and then it'll be up on YouTube as well. So you can let your friends know, and family, and everybody else. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is that the poets we're reading will come up and introduce themselves. And as I said, depending on how many, no more, maybe 8 to 10 minutes, 8 minutes, or whatever, somewhere in that, whatever feels comfortable. Okay? You want to start off?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Holman. I'm from Kensington, Maryland, and these are my poems. My first one is an elegy. My friend, he died the other week. His executor came behind and wiped all trace away from those who seek some little scrap, some bit for us to find. He was a minor hacker of renown himself, so surely this was in his plan, to leave no trace, no footprints he laid down, no loading screen, no tweets, no Instagram. Despite all this, I can't help thinking back to dinner we had many months ago. We ate Burmese, decided meat brains lack eidetic ways to capture all we know. I can't create the memories anew, but in flawed ways I can remember you. My next poem gets away from form a little bit. It's only actually been within the last year or so that I have not been entirely allergic to formal poetry. And this comes from that period of time. This one doesn't have a title yet. I wandered in the desert until I found my way to an astrologer. She told me to seek a Virgo. Instead, I seem to have found Virga. Impressive clouds raced toward me, sweeping up my senses, stoking my anticipation, until at last rain falls toward the cracked, impatient ground. But then it stops. Halfway down the sky, the rain evaporates, hanging like ribbons, tauntingly close yet still out of reach. I tire of building walls on which to stand to try and quench my thirst. I tire of wandering with my eyes wanting an oasis so badly that I hallucinate. I tire of the tantalizing mirage, lush and green, yet with neither depth nor substance. If you want me, I will be here, continuing to chart my path by the positions of the stars and moon. But I will not spend energy to scale walls that will never reach your raindrops, regardless of how much I desire to drink. My next two poems are sonnets, and they're actually part of a bigger cycle of sonnets that is in progress. I started working on it actually after one of these readings a few months ago, and was thinking a lot about privacy and the things that we give up in modern society and doing it that way. And so the cycle talks about a slightly dystopic world. But as I was writing it, I was finding it actually wasn't that different from ours. And maybe that, I don't know if that will continue or not as the cycle continues. We'll find out. But here are two poems from that. A stranger sits behind the camera's eyes, a rookie cop assigned to analyze the scenes the drone transmit to secret cells, become the fodder that becomes the wells of knowledge-forming networks in a web that join in forming social cause célèbre, and think about the strategies that earn investors' best and highest rates returned, and profile user information that was given freely without thinking back to ways in which the data would be stored. It's simple to interrogate the board. They don't need prompts to update or revise. He eagerly awaits his clips of finds. This next poem, I think, kind of mirrors that one a little bit, but comes later in the cycle. And we follow another person. She knows the drones. She knows about their game. Not long ago, she worked to program SAME. They pulled in folks from many walks of life and housed them, showed them how to stop world strife. Transparent lives would make the people free from blackmail, lies. The price was privacy. This seemed to be a winning recipe. Connect to others, see what they could see. Ironically, it bred new ways to hide. A whole new world away from prying eyes. Robotic sensors scraped the data raw. They threatened her when she told what she saw. But she's not done with all she has to say. One day she'll fight again and pave the way. My final poem this evening gets away from technology and gets more to actually an interest I have in ways to make paper by hand. Gets into, I took a Japanese paper making class a couple of years ago. And this poem is called washi, which is the word for Japanese paper. Pull the paper at least 3 times. Shake it back and forth the first, side to side the second, back and forth again the third. Throw off the cold water. Dry your new paper in the air. This is how you make strong paper, fragile looking though it may be. Dive into the dark pool. Come up for air at least 3 times. Shake off the water of the first. Dive back in for a second. Let it drip off of you, the third. Throw off the cold water, dry your new skin in the air. This is how you make strong people, fragile looking though they may be. Thank you all very much.
Okay, I am going to read a few poems by Sandra Maley. Sandra is sitting back here. She's had some problems walking, so that's her excuse for not standing up here on the stage. I will say that I've known Sandra for a very long time, since the mid-'70s when we were at Maryland together. I published books under the imprint of Dryad Press, and is it 3 years ago now? I published Disappearing Act, a wonderful book of poems by Sandra. And I just don't use wonderful lightly. And you'll get a sense, I'm going to read a few poems of Sandra's. The first one is called Columbus in Meditation. So this is not in her voice, but it's Columbus. It's after David Balos, who gave Sandra's been one of the two organizers of a translation conference at Montgomery College over these last few years, and David Balos was the keynote speaker a couple of years ago, but I won't go into the details about that. I'll just read the poem. It's called Columbus in Meditation. I have written in the margins of my Pliny, in my father's old Italian tongue, I have called on Portuguese to name New World lands, like Salvador and Cuba. I write letters to my lords in Castellano, keep my journal in Latin, the secret one in Greek. I know enough of Hebrew to read the celestial charts of Abraham Zacuto, and my many voyages have given me the lingua franca of the sea trade. But the dreams I have known beneath the luff and lull of sails, for this I have no tongue. And the second poem here is called Titian Woodcut, the Cutter Unknown. Almost as large as the power of Moses, Titian's grand submersion of Pharaoh's army into the Red Sea, set on 12 woodblocks on 12 sheets, the moment the last Israelite crossed the seabed to safety. Moses, raising his staff to close the waters over Pharaoh's army, lost to the tumult of creation. The unknown hand reaching from the canals of Venice to the book of Exodus, cutting into the dark water, blowing salt winds over the waves until they sparkle. Sandra, do you mind if I read the one on bamboo? Okay, I'm going to read it. I can say something about the origin of this poem, it turns out. At that translation conference, I mentioned that Sandra is one of the two principals organizing that. One of the speakers was a professor of Chinese, a marvelous translator, Jonathan Chaves, who teaches at George Washington. He gave a really comprehensive talk on poetry and art, and I'm focusing on one poet. And here I was sitting in the same room as Sandra, and I took in and really enjoyed listening to Jonathan Chaves. So did Sandra, but she also came away with this poem. It's called The Man Who Became Bamboo, and the epigraph is, I sing of bamboo when tongue. Now, the poetry, I just should say that Jonathan Chaves was speaking about, this is ancient Chinese poetry from the Sung, and it goes back to the Sung and Tang dynasties particularly, and that's where a lot of American poets going back to Ezra Pound and then a classicist, Arthur Waley, were translating, and still these ancient Chinese poets are being translated today. And it's not so incidentally, for those who are interested in poetry, they've been very influential on American poetry, I think, directly and indirectly through creative writing workshops and so forth. So this is called The Man Who Became Bamboo. Cool and green along the banks of the Chiang, bending into the Wei stream, curtain of blue and green embroidery, jade spears stronger than an ordinary tree. Its branches turn into dragons and climb along the rugged slopes, summoning the wind. Sprig by slanting sprig, fluttering the scarf of the moon goddess, like the notes of the Boksun flute, it lifts her skirts with a whisper, while I exult in my bamboo grove, drinking my wine, surrounded by books, and long shadows fall across the chessboard as I rest between my brushes and my poems. I eat only sweet pepper. And I must confess that when it comes to beauty, no one matches my beloved bamboo. I tell of your wonders. Ah, now I know what that last line must be. Now, there's a very different experience in hearing this poem read, whether by me or Sandra, and then seeing it on the page. It's a different experience because you can't see, but the poem moves in indented lines, and it's like a wave that's going down the page, comes back and forth. So, I think that will be it. And who is next? I will be back up again.
Hi, my name is Michael Norris, and I'm a Takoma resident. Just two quick short ones. This one's called Cowboy Cafe, which was an actual place on Arlington Boulevard in Arlington County. I've reworked it for years, usually with the same opening section, and haven't been happy with it, but we'll see how it goes. Tums, Trojans, and Tylenol. The vending machine held something for each phase of a relationship. Some pocket change and the yank of a pull rod released plastic combs and moist towelettes from a tumble-down chute into a receiving tray with a whirring groan. But there was little there of practical value to a practicing cowboy. No jerky, no liniments, no boot polish, and no brush to spiff up a dusty hat. Despite the watering hole's neon sign, the Cowboy Cafe was just a theme, a saloon named after a fading American archetype for a crowd of after-hours office workers and off-duty soldiers. Woozily, before last call, I shoved some coins into the automated box, hoping caffeinated pills would provide a second wind. But the antiquated machine jammed without returning my money, and I returned to my bar stool without satisfaction, transcendence, or further stimulation. And this was written for a lawyer friend of mine who sort of changed her priorities middle age. For years I eschewed the frou-frou of the girly girl. Those adornments that brought endearments were not for me. I came to earrings late. Piercings and push-ons, ear cuffs, and artfully arranged tendrils of hair audition this appendage for nibbles and nonsense. For decades, the personal took a back seat to the professional. Tactile pleasure was subsumed to mergers and acquisitions. I came to earrings late. Simple stud or chandelier, its molded flesh in a bustier. This plump, dangling, peach fuzz repository of sweat and perfume. These days my lobes are clothed in clad, bejeweled, augmented, pinched and bobbed, and as I've become accustomed to the clattering, the sound of my internal clock grows faint. I came to earrings late. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Meredith Pond, and I didn't think I was going to read anything tonight. I thought I was just going to enjoy all your poems. And since nobody's here, I'm going to read something. So Kim Roberts has a poetry quarterly that is a Beltway Poetry Quarterly, and she at some point did a tribute issue for Langston Hughes. And so I wrote a poem for that she published, and it's called Nobody Here. And I looked it up online because I didn't bring any poems, so I found it. Yay. So this is called Nobody Here. Nobody here except you, Langston. Painted on a big mural, you standing at the mic at the Vanguard, Mingus playing those weary blues. As you recite your poems, your face conjures a time when the city hummed and glittered and we listened to you on vinyl and slow danced in the corner when Shirley Horn showed up to sing at the One Step Down on the edge of Georgetown, not far from our own dusky river, that cruel-hearted river all fog and phantom. Now as we stand here at the boathouse looking out at white on white. Before dawn we walk home looking to you to remind us what poetry is, that syncopated beat, the heart pounding, all that foot tapping to music only we can hear. So there's that. And something else I would like to share with you, which you may know by heart and we could all recite together. This is Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. This is one of my absolute favorite poems in the whole wide world. So, this is Wild Geese. And Mary Oliver is now like 83 and still writing poems, so it's wonderful. Okay, Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, over and over, harsh and exciting, knowing your place in the family of things. Hooray for Mary Oliver. Yay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Breton Keating. I'm from Garrett Park, Maryland. And this is the first time I've ever read anything I've written out loud. I just have a couple that I wrote recently. Homes and hearts become exposed in winter. A bare-bellied nest in a tree line's arch, silver bark against rusted leaves. There is a beauty to the fragility. It seems we're always loving more than they'll love us back, and that's okay. Because who decided love was something we could measure to begin with? Who dared to define the bounds of the unbound force within and between us? Who thought to name love in words? And then another one that I wrote recently. I wished you could love enough for the both of us, and I knew that if you could, you would. You wrote me, dear beloved, and then the very next day said you were no longer in love. and this is why I've never trusted in words. In theory, we were perfect, a match made in heaven. In reality, I was drowning in infatuation, an ocean of nuanced metaphor, and feeling I never could put into words. You spoke in symbols, like when you said I was a princess and you were no prince, and I was left to guess what that meant. And when you gave me almond butter, thinking that would heal my past. You asked me to heal you, and I did. But I wasn't looking for a healer. I didn't want to be saved. I just want to be loved as I am, beautifully broken and content in an unvacuumed life. For you, words were a fun playground, like climbing trees. For me, they always felt like swords play. I knew this from the beginning, and yet I still let it go on. You asked me to write you a fairy tale. You gave me empty journals, and I filled those sheets even though my hand didn't fit on the page. You gave me prompts, a poem a day, when I told you I only wrote love stories for others. We both hoped maybe you'd be the one to change that. And I realized a touch too late, I didn't want to write my story. I don't want to write my story. I want to live it. Thank you.
I think I will read a couple of poems. When I was putting a book together, I discovered that I had written or found my way into poems about conjunctions and pronouns. So there's a poem called "and" a poem called "or," and another poem called "The Indefatigable It." You know, we use these "it is," "there are," I become very conscious of that and try not to start sentences with that. And Richard, you're here to read. Yeah, okay. This is a poem, I think. It's called Etc. So right off, I admit I am indebted to etc. When memory fails, and it does increasingly, let alone wit and lack of knowledge, etc. is always there to bail me out. No questions asked. This is to say that when I am at a loss or in trouble, I don't need to speed dial for help. Etc. is by my side. No smirks, no judgment, no rolling eyes, because this is the third time today. No "at your service, boss," no apologies asked for. No one I know is as selfless, no matter the need. It can help make a great stew of boiled beef with red potatoes, carrots, celery, bay leaves, salt, freshly ground pepper, garlic, lots of garlic, etc. And just yesterday, or was it last week already, so many exes were killed by terrorists who attacked with AK-47s, grenade launchers, machetes, etc. Or bombed the hell out of the land, whose land, whatever land, with bunker busters, cluster bombs, bouncing bombs, barrel bombs, etc. Until they ran out of targets to or any land left to bomb, etc. Depended on as it is, etc., has no overweening pride. It has no desire. Its job is to help you when in need. Like the invisible God, who we are told over and over again, loves us all and knows firsthand our sorrows, our joys, our griefs, etc. Kill them all, Elohim instructed the kings back then in biblical times and in modern times, and at all times in between. Kill them all, men, women, children, animals, etc. So some of these poems take on a life of their own in a sense. You kind of follow where they go. And I think I'll just read one more, and this is called Rains. So for 2 nights and 1 long day, the rains have not stopped. They have drenched the earth, have made a sponge of it, have left the foliage leaden with wet, leaves adrift and capsizing, this backfield an ocean of grass. You can feel your own self dragged under and down, struggling to pull yourself up. And still through this rising flood, what manner of birds sounding their calls through the sopping rain? Neither heartbreak, nor heart's love in them, nor promise, nor grief, nor courage, nor giving up. And here you are, emptied out over love, its loosening, its drift and departure. Of course they are singing whatever we need them to sing. Resist, hold out, this too will pass. We will forage again, we will feed our young. Listen to these choruses of no expectation, with their empty syllables echoing yours. If the sun stays dark today, it will break through tomorrow or the day after. It does not matter. Your body, for some unaccountable reason, rises on these notes like a well-made boat riding the cliff of storm-risen waves that would drag you under for good, and yet you ride their lift with no expectation, just trust. All that they are is all that they are, and for now that is enough. So, okay, Richard.
Sorry I'm late. My name is Richard Lohr, and I happen to have two poems on my iPhone, so I'll read them to you. Well, I just wrote this one. Let's see how. Oh, okay, maybe. It's not easy being blind. Yeah. Okay. No, not blind. Okay. House hunting in upstate New York. We are walking through empty houses, past pedestal sinks on Asian rugs and parquet floors, fearing next winter's cold claw this summer and snow melts that penetrate flat rubber roofs. Photos of dead men glimpse us as we go. We touch the grief of aging wives, smell aromas of past oil spills, spilt soups, lost jobs, thanks given, grasping at the realtor's words as we go. We are whirling to the subtle sound of amniotic fluid seeping in the joists of empty houses. Hear echoes in the hallways of old feet and chipped stairs, of damask cloths and freshly painted walls. Forgetting it is our own old tired bones we'll bring, we entertain the giddy hopes of being new this spring. And one more somewhere here. Oh, here it is. So this is one called Carried by Whales. So maybe this way, okay. Remember salt blue green water, churning cold, rough hot hides beneath our feet, rising high before the dive. Standing on the dorsal ridge, your hands hugged a supple fluke. In our descent, your desperate squeals, our frightened, trembling bodies splayed across the fin, the whales, their moaning songs, please for life to start or end. Whales diving like sinking ships, like knives through sodden bread. Their bodies cleave the ocean into surging, twisting chasms, into storms of froth. In the melee of the water, in the splitting frenzy of the loudest shaking sounds, I lost my grip. We fell and sinking fell too deep, following the paths of whales beyond our will. Our sleek bodies descended until resting spent on sparse azure grass. In those dark depths, you played and sang, summoning more whales. I held my breath against the water's weight, fearing I would drown.
this is a short evening tonight, I must say. But before we have a small reception out here in the atrium, so I hope everybody will gather over there. I want to remind you that there are these books over here, so you might take a look that Kevin Adler brought along to see if there are books that you would like to take home with you. We can spread them out, and you can take a look. Also, we will start up again in January, and that'll be January 18th, the third Thursday. Jason Gebhardt, Clara Jones, and Pamela Murray Winters. We'll have 3 readers, and we have readers going in through, through the middle of May. And after that, we will have another open reading, and that will be summer, and a larger crowd of poets, I think. So I appreciate your coming this evening. And also I want to say Sandra and her poetry group will be here for that May reading. We've done this before, where we've had, I think twice before, where we've had poets who are getting together, among themselves, like once a month they meet, and so they've. You mentioned Kim Roberts, but Kim Roberts and the group that she's been meeting with, we had, I think, 5 poets up here, and they talked about their own work as well and how they work together in this very informal, I don't know if you would call it a workshop, but gathering where they help each other out and respond to each other on their poems. Okay, so thank you for coming, and please take a look at the books, and then let's get together outside.